When we started them, I wasn't very confident they would work out. We have a market cap of over $6 billion. One day I'm having a chat with my son. My son says, you did all this because you liked your time away from the family. Trying to impress anybody else, including your own family, you will end up a big failure. So just don't do it. They don't have the patience to believe something good will happen 16 years later. They want it to happen in 6 days or in 6 months. Listen, just do whatever you want to do for your own satisfaction. Don't do it for some end outcome or anything, because actually nobody's going to recognize you. And I did not want to do it. But if I could be born again, I would do the same thing.
Welcome to the Sonya Barlow Show. My name is Sonya Barlow, and I am the host of this very authentic audio and video based podcast. Ultimately, I wanted to interview ordinary people who are becoming extraordinary. I really wanted to create something which doesn't necessarily exist on the internet today. And that's no noise, no clutter, to the point conversations with very cool people all over the world. If you have any questions that you want to answer, if you want to be a part of the show, or if you're just interested in where we're traveling next, drop me a line, hello@sonyabarlow.co.uk or @SonyaBarlowUK. I won't keep you any longer because we have amazing interviews lined up. Let's get straight into the chat.
I started this company, PolicyBazaar, in 2008, and the principal reason for that is I originally belong to India, and in India you have a huge and growing middle class, but we don't have an NHS like we have in the UK. And so if people fall sick and there's no real state education or state home, so for people's pensions, people's problems of death, disease, disability, there's no backup if things go wrong. And so I thought we would try and educate the market, the people, that you should buy insurance as a way to protect yourself against the effects of death, disease, and disability. The other reason to do this was because, again, I know India quite intricately. So 2 generations ago, India was a joint family system.
Yeah.
Where all such problems were taken care of by the family, but now it's all nuclear families. And thus, when things go bad, there is really no, backup. So we've spent the last 16 years educating people on that, and then all the problems that come with it, because you just don't need to tell people about the products, you also need to finally get them those products, get them through, because there's medicals, there's all that kind of stuff, and then you also need to make sure people's claims get settled. So just fighting the people's corner for the last 16 years, making sure they get more and more comfortable with the insurance and develop more and more trust in it. That's what I've been doing. It's a company called PolicyBazaar. Now I've been 16 years doing it.
How can you stay committed to the same cause over 16 years? And I only ask that because the new generation, especially of entrepreneurs and hustlers, want to flip things quick. And even our attention spans are no more than 7 seconds now, if you look at the data. So how can you do 16 years of the same business?
So part of it is individual and part of it is the opportunity. And individual, again, is part of it is who you are and part of it is training. So a lot of my friends will say that about me, that on one side I could appear quite strategic, on the other hand I could be like a bob in the ocean who just doesn't move, who can be there for a very long period of time doing nothing. So part of it is that I have nowhere else to go, I have no other plans, so this is it and I keep doing it. The second thing is the problem is huge, and I think that is what keeps you exciting. I often tell people, I've done a travel business before this, I was in a consulting business before this, I was in industrial packaging business before them. None of them excited me from the core. In the sense, none of them gave me the thought that if I could be born again, I would do the same thing, right? Once more. And because as a problem, the gravity of what you're solving is so huge. And the amazing thing is, the people whom you're solving it for, will usually not recognize you're helping them. They will only recognize when a very, very bad time comes, when there's nobody standing with them, that actually you were helping them in some way. So I think it feels very good doing it. And I think that's what I'd say for the rest of the team, because I could say individually as a person, I may be that bob in the ocean that doesn't want to go anywhere, but we have 17,000 employees and almost no churn, right? So that means the problem must be big enough and inspiring enough for a lot of people to not go away, unless we provide them such a great social life that they don't feel like going anywhere else.
17,000 employees. You've been doing it for 16 years. What was that pivotal moment that you went from, I'm going to give up my stable 9 to 5 to start another business, which may or may not be successful, and risk everything to basically help people when they die, or at least before they die?
That was, I would say, actually a very weak moment, because I had organized another job and I was going to take that up. And I had been a job person all along till then. But we were 18 co-founders, and the 18 co-founders could not have raised the capital without me. And to some extent, for me, it was too big a deep dive, because I was leaving a stable career in the UK. My family would never move to India. I knew that. So it was too much of a dive into the deep end, and I did not want to do it. But somewhere in me, and that's what I say, somewhere in me I found it that 17 families are more important than one family, and thus ended up making the decision. I think that's why it's such a wonderful decision, because actually the decisions you make for yourself usually don't turn out to be so good. But whenever you make decisions thinking of others, they come out to be fabulous. So I think, that was basically the reason we started.
Well, I mean, 18 co-founders.
We were 18 co-founders. I was the senior most. Yeah, we have about 14 of them.
All right.
today.
So I guess my question being is, it's hard enough to find a co-founder, business partner, life partner, friend that you want to actually, stay with long term. How do you manage a relationship with 18 co-founders when you all are so different in your own sense, though this kind of one cause does unite you?
They did somewhere coalesce around me. So I was the senior most partner of them. And so on day one, when I say 18 co-founders, we had one person who was the head of admin. We had one person who was the CTO. We had one person who was the CHRO. We had a pretty wide team. We had a CFO on day one. We had a COO on day one. So we had a extremely wide team, right? And I think they all looked up to me. So they to a large extent followed. And that's why I, in a way, owed it to them not to ditch them midway, right? Because I couldn't have just said, I'll care about myself and not about the team.
Yeah.
So in a way, it was that kind of a relationship. They believe Yashish knows what he's doing. If we stick with him, we'll be fine. He has good vision. If we have ideas, we'll tell him. But otherwise, we are with him. And that works. Sometimes that works. You don't need a huge amount of talent. I always say the two most underrated qualities that I have personally found are trust and patience. And I think these 17 people all have trust and patience, or at least 13 of them have a lot of trust and patience. And I think that's what sets them apart. Because staying 17 years, listening to somebody with maybe 5% questioning takes a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so when you compare your founder journey, your hustle, the resilience, the trust and patience to the entrepreneurs of today, what is your advice for them?
I think there's nothing like entrepreneurs of today or entrepreneurs of then. There were people different then, and there are people different today. See, I think we've gotten into the number multiples too much. We've gotten into impressing other people too much, which is not necessary. In the end, maybe I'm old school in that, because people say, why do you care as long as there's a value out there in the market, as long as you will sell your business at a particular thing and move on. It's okay. Somewhere that, what you call trade mentality, I think it does not sit well with my builder's mentality. And I'm somewhat wrong in that. I get it. Sometimes I challenge myself that, listen, why do I believe that things can only be built and, not traded? Of course, there's a lot of trade that goes on in the world. I just learned a very special thing. The average holding period for a stock in India is 30 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So in 30 minutes, the person flips it already.
Yeah.
So that tells you that trade is a very big part of the market.
And they make money?
No, they mostly lose money.
They mostly lose money, absolutely.
Yeah. But the point is, a lot of people have trade in their mentality, and trade works for 1 out of 5 people. But the one for whom it works, it becomes a story.
Yes.
And whereas in cases like ours, where you spend 16 years, 20 years building a business, you can have a huge success. But it's taken a long time. And at the end of it, many people are not ready for that 16 years. Or they don't have the patience to believe something good will happen 16 years later. They want it to happen in 6 days, or in 6 months, or in whatever.
And can you give us a moment, a time where you've potentially made a mistake or you've failed and what you've learned from it? Because a big part of the conversations that we're having and a lot of the questions that we receive, we're afraid to do something. We're scared of rejection. We don't think it's going to work out. I'm worried that it's not going to work. There's going to be failure. There's going to be risk involved. Though I know those are acumen though I know those are qualities you need to build a business, to scale a business.
There's some things I have learned. So I'm not the same person that I was when I started the company. When I started the company, I used to work with very like-minded people. But as we built the company, people became part of the team who were not absolutely like-minded, who had different minds, who used to think differently, who used to... And I realized one of the big parts of being successful is to be able to hold divergent thoughts at the same time and have divergent conversations. Whether those are mistakes or the right things, we'll only know in time. I think also without trying, like when we started the corporate business, when we started point of sales presence business, it's a business, doesn't matter, right? When we started them, I wasn't very confident they would work out. But one of my now colleagues, he was very convinced that we should try them, even though he himself wasn't sure whether they would work out. But he said, if we don't try out new things, how are we going to go faster than just our core? And our core will grow at a certain rate. It'll grow at 40-50%, but we need to grow faster. We want to gather more scale. And I wasn't convinced, because you don't do things which are not very strategic to you. But we did them nonetheless, and they worked out okay. Some of them, like out of the 3 or 4 things we did, 2 worked out, 2 did not work out. And it's okay. Without trying it out, there's a Chinese proverb, right? That if you don't step into the water at all, how will you cross the river?
Yeah.
So I guess to some extent, I'm extremely risk averse, but to some extent, some of my colleagues, because they were willing to take risks, we've learned some new things.
I love it. Where is PolicyBazaar now after 16 years?
PolicyBazaar is growing. It's 17,000 employees. We've got 20 million customers. We are about 20% of the health and term business in the country. We continue to grow, and we're doing about $2-3 billion of premium. We have a market cap of over $6 billion, and we continue to grow. We're just starting out, because if you think about it from an insurance industry perspective, we are still about 3 to 4% market share. So we have a long way to go. At heart, I always ask myself, are we doing the right thing for the consumers? The answer is yes. I say, is it the perfect thing for the consumers? The answer is usually no. Is it better than the rest of the industry? The answer is emphatic yes. We try to kind of push ourselves towards perfection as much as we can afford.
Do you, as a founder then, who has all of these accolades, do you feel successful?
I don't think at the end of it, success or failure really matters, because I'll tell you why. What does success or failure mean? It means being recognized as something. And who do you want recognition from? You want recognition from the people closest to you. And I'll share a very small anecdote. So I thought all along I was doing this, and they'll do very well for the family and all that stuff. And I come back, and one day I'm having a chat with my son. My son says, you did all this because you really enjoyed all this and you liked your time away from the family. And it just, you know what I mean, right? It kind of hits you in the gut. So you're like, okay. And you don't argue with it. You just let it be. You just let it pass. But the point is, what I realized at that point is, listen, just do whatever you want to do for your own satisfaction. Don't do it for some end outcome or anything. Because actually, nobody's going to recognize you. So in the end, nobody will recognize you. If you're trying to impress anybody else, including your own family, you will end up a big failure. So just don't do it. Just do what you're enjoying, and you'll be fine.
How do you spend your time off? How do you go and recharge? What do you do to feel inspired when the world is so noisy and crowded?
So whenever I'm doing anything, I'm kind of in that, but I do have one big advantage, which is I've been a runner since I was 8 years old. So that whole running, swimming, cycling combination, I've enjoyed all those activities, and I again do them not because I want to stay fit. I just do them because I like them, and they can be huge fillers. Like, it can be 18, 20 hours a week, so they can be huge fillers, and they are massive energizers, because you come back from them with so many ideas and so many thoughts that you could. And so much clarity of mind, which you would not have had at the beginning of that particular activity.
And so as we start to wrap up, I really want to understand, 16 years ago, you didn't realize where you would be, but you saw some of the industry trends, you saw the gaps in the market, and you weren't afraid to go out and kind of, try and solve them. Currently in 2024, what are some challenges you see, or what are some trends that you see that you're both excited by, but also frustrated by?
I think the industry has not done a good job of claims settlement. And what do I mean by good job? They've done a good job in their own mind. Much better than they were doing 5 years ago. But the consumer doesn't have trust. The consumer basically feels, like in the UK, if two cars have an accident, they don't start fighting with each other.
Yeah.
Right? In India, they start fighting with each other. And simply because they don't trust the claims process to be smooth. If a person falls sick in the UK, you don't understand claims, right? Because you just go to the NHS and your bills are, you don't even know what a bill looks like, right? In India, you don't know whether the bill will be paid, how painful it would be, will it take 10 days to settle, will it take 2 days to settle? So it's a painful process which is defeating trust. We believe our purpose is to make sure that a customer doesn't hear the word claim. Because the experience should be just like the UK, right?
Yes.
You walk in, you walk out, you have got a policy, you are covered.
Done, absolutely.
And you shouldn't have to deal with the concept of money, or you shouldn't have to deal with the concept of claim. Now, this seems to, but it has to be there. And I think solving it at the beginning of challenge, it'll probably take us the best of 5 to 10 years to do it. We are on our way. We are much better than the rest of the industry. We are measuring ourselves. If people bought through us, their claim settlement rates are much higher. But are we where we want to be? Where we want to be is you go to a hospital and you walk out of the hospital and you never hear the word claim. You hear the word treatment, because you're there for treatment. You're not there for a claim.
Yeah.
That's it.
And my final question is, what are the 3 skills that you believe entrepreneurs, business leaders, change makers need from the get-go in their business if they want to be as successful in scaling their business as you have been with PolicyBazaar?
I think they have to believe in the team, because you can't build a business alone, and for that you have to share equity. I think it's very critical that the founders share a lot of equity with their team, because it will take time, it will take effort. I think you have to have patience and trust. You have to be both operational and strategic. A founder needs to be everything, because a founder cannot afford to be not one thing, right? Because that'll be a weak spot. But they have to have a team which actually does most of the work. I just think that's basically it. It's about people and trust and patience, and you have to obviously have the vision.
Well, thank you so much. And if people want to connect with you, how can they reach out to you?
They can email me, Yashish at PolicyBazaar.com.
That's simple. Well, Yashish, thank you so much for your time. Thank you everyone for listening and watching, and I'm really grateful for the tips that you've shared.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Pleasure.
If LinkedIn and Bumble had a baby, that would be me. So I'm building a tech business to democratize access to networks, communities, education, mentorship, and friendships for women especially.